I love Clutch Sports. They are absolutely hysterical. I mean, look at this. Retweet to vote for hashtag NBA All-Star at Ben Simmons 25. This is hilarious. I mean, right after coming out and saying, hey, my client is having a declining mental health, we should do whatever it takes to give him some space so he could use this time to heal and try to get better mentally, they decide to jokingly tweet out a vote for Ben Simmons as an NBA All-Star. Man, I love hypocrisy. What's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. It's been a minute since I last made content. Again, I'm still recovering from the COVID and the Omicron and whatnot, which is apparently, according to LeBron James, the equivalent to a common cold. So before we get to this insane move that the Cleveland Cavaliers are considering making, make sure you follow us on Instagram or you subscribe and turn on our notifications for a chance to win $500. And by the way, based off of the inspiration you guys gave me for my merchandise, we just dropped Cut the Cap merch on TheFlightMike.com. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Do you know what's one of the biggest surprises of this entire NBA season that myself, Get Like Hoop, or Mike Korzemba were not able to get down on the Laced Up podcast, predicting the Cleveland Cavaliers as a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference? That's something that we believed was a bit of a fluke in the beginning of the season. Time is progressing on, and it seems like it's no fluke, man. This team is for real. They absolutely crushed their draft pick of Evan Mobley, who hasn't played recently, but when he's on the court, 14 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists per game, a PER of 15.8, 33% from 3. Fantastic numbers for a player that's supposed to be a raw and lanky rookie. But in addition to this, man, and this is a trend that I always try to bring up, and people laugh at me when I try to bring this up, primarily because I'm a Laker fan and I think we're suffering from this, and at the same time, I'm seeing the best teams in the NBA win because of this. It seems like the way to build a team currently is just by having tremendous depth. And it seems like the Cleveland Cavaliers have that depth. There's many things contributing to the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers are performing so well, whether it's Jarrett Allen always having been a great traditional center, to Isaac Okoro, who is finally coming into his own. Colin Sexton is injured, but you have Darius Garland stepping up in his stead, the aforementioned Evan Mobley, and yeah, Kevin Love isn't necessarily the player that he once was, but I bet you he is still great morale support, and he's shooting 41% from 3 this year, which is still a remarkable percentage to have from any big man in the NBA. So it seems like a team that originally was supposed to be contending for lottery balls, which I'm assuming everyone thought that the Cleveland Cavaliers might be a play-in team, might be really good this year, but not so much where they'd be challenging to get into the top 4 of the Eastern Conference. At the time that we're making this video, they're actually 5th place in the Eastern Conference, but they're like a game behind from 4th place. They have 20 wins, 13 losses, and they're trailing the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Chicago Bulls, and the Brooklyn Nets. They're all within like 2 or 3 games of each other. The next big drop off is the Philadelphia 76ers and the Washington Wizards and the Charlotte Hornets, which are like 3 games behind, not from first place, but from where the Cleveland Cavaliers are. And ultimately, that's bringing in a very interesting conversation. Once again, Ben Simmons is always rumored to any team that is contending. I think Clutch Sports has something to do with this, because over the offseason, it was Ben Simmons wants to be traded to any of the LA teams. And then the Clippers and the Lakers kind of came out and said, there's no way we could have you on our team. It doesn't make any sense. The Golden State Warriors had internal discussions, but they weren't really interested in him. And then obviously the Sacramento Kings, I guess, just didn't want to part with all their assets to get him. But now you have the Cleveland Cavaliers entering the fold, and Adrian Wojnarowski actually commented on it, so it makes this piece of information extremely legitimate. So let's take a look at what Woj has to say about this. Ben Simmons in Philadelphia. I think you'll start to see the 76ers re-engage teams. Certainly, he is no closer to agreeing to come back to play with the Philadelphia 76ers this season, and they don't have really any traction on a trade yet. The trade deadline is February 10th, and you can expect teams who've been engaged with Philly previously, Indiana, Sacramento, Minnesota amongst them. But here's an interesting team to watch, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who before they went on this really incredible start to the season had been engaged with Philly on Simmons. They've got some really intriguing assets, either in a straight deal or perhaps a 3 or 4 team deal. It was reported earlier JB Bickerstaff agreed to a new extension today through the 2026 to 2027 season. This is a team in Cleveland that's just a game out of third place. Well, at the time that this is being reported, at least. Philly's a team right now in that bunched up East who could be out of the play-in with a couple of losses the way it's bunched up. So expect Philly to start talking more with teams as we get closer to that February 10th deadline. And it'll be interesting to see if Cleveland re-engages as a team that I think is built for long-term success with all their young players. Ben Simmons is only 25 years old and he does fit into the timeline of that team. So this is really interesting because Ben Simmons being added to any team, automatically in my head, the most linear way that you could explain this is the team gets significantly better defensively and they might take a step back offensively. It really depends on how you get the best out of Ben Simmons. Maybe he needs a change of scenery and might be a little bit more inspired if he's not sharing the court with Joel Embiid, who, by the way, he believes is holding him back from true statistical dominance and allowing his career to flourish, which is absolutely stupid to me, but that's what Ben Simmons thinks.
At this point, I don't care about that man, honestly.
These are all really good teams that could potentially trade for Ben Simmons, and these are all consistent with reports that we made in the past. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Sacramento Kings have been in since this past offseason. D'Angelo Russell and Ben Simmons actually played high school ball together, but chances are D'Angelo Russell would get traded for Ben Simmons because I don't see the Minnesota Timberwolves trading Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards for Ben Simmons. But Sacramento was also mentioned in the rumors, and I think they're probably the weakest contender, and they're probably the team that the Sixers would trade for. If Daryl Morey is just giving up and can't find good enough value for Ben Simmons, then they'll just decide to trade Ben Simmons for Marvin Bagley and Buddy Hield and maybe Tyrese Halliburton and or De'Aaron Fox. I'm really unsure how a trade like that would go. The easiest team to potentially make a Ben Simmons trade for would be the Indiana Pacers because they came out and said, hey, we're trading each and every one of these players on our team except for Chris Duarte and maybe some other young players that we want to see what's there. And all the Pacers players are very solid role players that could contribute to a championship team, from Karis LeVert to Malcolm Brogdon, all the way to Miles Turner, who is one of the most underappreciated centers in the entire NBA this year. And that's before we get to the best player on their entire roster, and that's Domantas Sabonis. And ultimately, if I had to make a prediction, if Daryl Morey wants to get the most value for Ben Simmons, he needs to hit up Indiana because that's the team that could give him the absolute most value for Ben Simmons. If he could somehow figure out a way to get Domantas Sabonis plus one of those other players, then I consider that to be a huge victory. But for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who would they trade for Ben Simmons? Well, according to Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com, this is what he mentioned a couple months ago, saying that sources maintain the Cavaliers don't have any untouchables. However, prized rookie Evan Mobley and rising point guard Darius Garland are closest to that designation. The likelihood of either player being moved is incredibly low. That leaves Colin Sexton, Isaac Okoro, and future first rounders to help cajole a Simmons deal. According to sources, the 76ers would want limited or no protections on those firsts in hopes of flipping them for an all-star caliber player around the deadline. And then they had this cute little projected trade saying Philadelphia would trade Ben Simmons to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They'd receive Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, Isaac Okoro, a Milwaukee 2022 first round pick, and a 2023 first round pick that's top 3 protected. Bear in mind, this information came all the way back in September, so that leaves the question of whether or not it's worth the Cleveland Cavaliers potentially messing up quite possibly their best formula since the days of LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love to bring in a superstar player. On one hand, they have a winning formula already, and you might not want to tinker with that chemistry, especially since Ben Simmons, with all due respect, has seemed very toxic over the past year. I mean, bear in mind, this is all stemming from the fact that he did not have a good game against the Atlanta Hawks. He did not want to deal with the backlash and was not handling the heat really well. He has not been able to develop a jump shot yet, which is 100% work ethic based. So do you want to potentially mess the chemistry up in Cleveland to bring in Ben Simmons? At the same time, how often do you have an opportunity to bring in a superstar caliber player to your team? How often do you have the opportunity to trade for a former #1 overall pick and rookie of the year, which Donovan Mitchell should have won over him if you ask me, but I digress. How often do you have that type of opportunity? What if Ben Simmons is able to flourish underneath the Cleveland Cavaliers? That's a question that the Cavaliers need to answer for themselves. I think if they're going to continue to search this way, if they can build a trade around around Colin Sexton, then sure, that's a possibility, but I don't think the Philadelphia 76ers would want a player that can't contribute to their team currently, and I don't really know how much they value a player like Colin Sexton or Isaac Okoro or Lauri Markkanen or the 2 first-round picks that were proposed in this theoretical trade. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. What do you think the Cleveland Cavaliers should do? What do you think the Philadelphia 76ers should do? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.